Today is December 19th, 2025. It's 10 a.m. Pacific time, and this is RJI's end of the year call with our Global Advisory Council. We have 11 members that will join us from around the world. And for those who are listening, RJI is an association and a network with over 7,200 members and affiliates who support systemic justice reform based on restorative justice. And we were founded in 2008. We want to thank each member today for being here. And some of the highlights for this year, a lot of the work that we did this year was not always visible, but most of our work is on our website under news and podcasts. And I just want to mention a few things that we did. We did a podcast with Austin Stack on his book, which you'll hear about today, Justice for My Father. We put out a statement this year on the rule of law as it applies to the treatment of offenders in custody, particularly those who are immigrants. And we appointed 3 new ambassadors of restorative justice. Pastor Jack Sullivan Jr., who will join us later from the U.S., Professor Marie Keenan here from Ireland, and Pastor Jonathan Peter Clayton from South Africa. Thank you all for being here. And again, we'll have about 7 minutes each. So let's start with Upneat, because Upneat, I know you can't be at all the whole call. So go ahead from India. Thank you.
Hello, Lisa, and hello, everybody, all the members. It's good to see everyone and meet everyone online after a very long time. And yes, it's near midnight, and I have just a few hours left before I have another flight to catch. It's been an interesting year, and the year end has been very progressive in terms of restorative justice movement in India. In last month, in fact, we had a conference in which I was also one of the panelists and chairing the sessions. And this was in the south of India, and the conference was on restorative justice itself, reimagining justice. And this was also in terms of looking at some of and exploring the restorative practices that are taking place. So there were academicians, there were practitioners, and there were civil society organizations and the university, wherein we had different sessions and workshops, including listening circles. So this has been a good development in terms of spreading awareness, in terms of critically examining the current practices that we are having, and within the legal framework that is there, also exploring the ways that whether it is different measures that can be taken to have restorative justice practices. Another thing that is emerging out is that we are currently seeing a lot of push being given to mediation by the apex court in the country. And one thing that is, we say mediation is not restorative justice, but I think we need to really also look at in terms of exploring the mediation part and having RJ practices within that framework. Then about 2 weeks back, there was this Justice Mela Fete, which got a lot of civil society organizations who are working in this area of justice and from even marginalized communities, etc. So this was a very different kind of an interaction that happened with all people, also questioning what is justice and looking at issues from the lens of the common person, in the sense that we look at the ecosystem and how we can co-create justice. So those dialogues and those aspects are spreading around, and also making people, looking at tribal population, looking at the most marginalized communities, and also the environmental issues, and having different kind of dialogues as well. I think this is a good movement, because otherwise sometimes it gets restricted to just discussions. But getting people together, I think that's something very positive that I'm seeing happening in our country now. It's a small step, but it's a way of getting also victims' voices being heard, and also released prisoners speaking about their experiences and the failure of the traditional criminal justice system as well. Also listing about, gender-based violence. There was another dialogue that I was a part of, and what we found was that there has been no, I mean, we knew that, but then also women who've been victims of domestic violence openly sharing their experiences, which never used to happen much before. So I think in terms of also looking at the most triply marginalized and those most oppressed, speaking about the violence that they've suffered is a step forward. And another expansion is which I would like also the members to reflect upon. Recently, I came across, and I'm not sure whether it is being practiced in other countries apart from UK, is in terms of there was an article by Mashiaro Suzuki. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, on shuttle mediation and as an aspect of restorative justice. So that's
Can
something
you
where you are
repeat that?
having
Oh, Upney, can you repeat what you just said?
Mashiaro Suzuki talking about shuttle mediation. It's just like, you have apology letters being written. So, in terms of that aspect, which is happening in the UK, looking at where you will have the victim being absent and no direct encounter taking place between the victim and the offender or in other aspects, but the facilitator working towards the communication between both the parties. So that's something that is a new aspect, and I think where RGI can also work on is in terms of offering spaces and some kind of help in terms of building up those skills as a facilitator for restorative justice. So that's one part, maybe, Lisa, that you can take forward for 2026, because there is a growing demand. Like for mediation training, there's a lot of demand, and there's this whole certification that takes place. But for restorative justice framework, I'm not sure in terms of the accredited trainings that will be available. But I see a lot of potential in that part of it. So that's from my side. We're also relooking, a lot, and in that Bangalore conference that we had. Uh, in India, we have a law wherein under 18 years old, even if there were consensual, in a consensual relationship, it's like gets criminalized. So romantic cases were getting criminalized, and we are having a lot of young offenders inside the prison system. So there is a lot of relook at changing the law. In even the apex court, Supreme Court has come out with in some judgments that asking the government to have a relook about it. And in those instances, there's no criminal intent. So the empirical research is also on in that. And today again, I was in that dialogue where we say that not all of them are sex offenders, and we need to really re-examine and relook at that aspect. So community sentence is again something that has come up in the country, but we are not having that framework for sentencing guidelines, and also bringing in restorative justice within that framework as well. So that's going to be maybe a step towards 2026 that I foresee that could be happening. But thank you so much for providing this opportunity for me to share in the first go. But yes, it's always a great learning to hear from everybody. And of course, I think that mutual exchange of ideas and even the challenges that are being faced by all of us in different areas, that goes a long way in terms of understanding and rebuilding. And also that networking becomes essential in terms of spreading this movement of restorative justice. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to all the members.
Thank you so much, Upnate. And I know we've been in contact about possibly adding a couple new people to this council, and two of them I've checked with Upnate about, both individuals, one from Pakistan and the other one possibly from Nepal. So thank you, Upnate. Thank you so much. Let's go to, let's see, Jonathan Peter Clayton, who is our new RJI Ambassador of Restorative Justice. Welcome.
Yeah, Thank you very much, Lisa, and all the members of the Restorative Justice International Global Board. It's always good to meet new people across the globe, and always good to hear what is taking place in terms of restorative justice. As you know, that we focus on restorative justice with incarcerated male and female, those who are already sentenced. And there is a couple of interesting experience that we had again in this year. Just to give you a breakup here, we spend about 100 hours per a group of either 24 participants or 28 participants, and at 2 correctional facilities we had 38 participants. And so it was really good to engage with all these men and women incarcerated. And we found it so significant. But the first thing that I want to also mention, because of our restorative justice process in custodial settings, the Department of Correctional Services asked us to sign with them a partnership in a memorandum of understanding, and they giving us now the opportunity to run restorative justice, obviously as we have funds, to run restorative justice in all 243 prisons in South Africa.
Wonderful.
And that is very exciting. There is a huge demand from correctional centers for this process. And we really appreciate the Department of Correctional Services. For the half of 2025, we had 218 participants, male and female, but we also have 585 families that attended the restorative justice process, because the process is just as important for victims, the offenders, the community at large, but also the family of the offenders. Together, we spent with the female restorative justice, where we had 258 family members that attended the female restorative justice out of 56 participants, because Jenny, my wife, is only working in 2 correctional facilities, female correctional facilities. And as we always know that money is always the issue, and but as we look back now, we spent 535,000 rand for the male restorative justice, no government funding, and 361,000 rand for the female offenders. So in total, it was just over 8,000 rand that we spend on this restorative justice the last 6 months. And what is also significant in this process, there are now many countries that want to come and learn about the process. They are amazed that we can run this process for 100 hours per group. And we had now, in the month of November, we had a German team, social workers and psychologists, and even 3 formerly incarcerated people as well. And they were so excited to spend the hours with us that they are now planning to come back with a new team in March of 2026. We also have 2 students from Sweden who came to do their internship of restorative justice. And as I met with them before they left, they were super excited and learned so much about the process. And then we also had a team of 6 young students from America, and they also came to observe the process. And so the Department of Correctional Services even allows us to have people from all over the world to come and learn about the restorative justice process. And then I also want to mention that one of the breakthroughs with the men on restorative justice and the female is when on the second day of the process we have victims of crime, rape victims, families who was murdered, armed robbery, and these people come and share what happened to them or their families. We had a rape victim last month that was raped 36 years ago. A child was born, and 19 years later, after she gave the child up for adoption, there was a knock on the door, and the child said, "I'm the child that you gave away. Why did you give me away? Where is my father?" And she had to share 19 years later with her daughter that she was raped. And then, and now, the last few months, I was personally focused on life sentence offenders. For me, this is the best group of people to work with on restorative justice. Although 60% when they start with the process pleaded not guilty in court, they're still in denial, they lie to their family, but 36 hours later, about 80% told their families that they are guilty. We lied to you. We realize the impact of our crime on our victims and as you, as our family. We realize the damage that was caused. We realize that we don't take responsibility. We don't want people to hold us accountable. And then they make these confessions. And that is why we planned again to focus a lot for next year on life sentence offenders. And I forwarded to our treasurer a budget for the first 6 months of 400,000 rand. And a week later, I got a donation of 400,000 rand to cover for the first 6 months. So we are excited about what's happening in South Africa. We're excited for people that's coming to South Africa to observe this process. Restorative justice is here to stay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Jonathan. Thank you. That was very good. Joe Berry, you want to contribute? And so good to see you from the UK, and make sure you introduce yourself fully. Welcome.
Thank you. So good to be here. Yes, Joe Berry, founder of Building Bridges for Peace, recently been given CBE from the King. I think that's what you wanted me to say, for services for peace and reconciliation. It was back in June, so I'm still getting used to it. Doesn't flow naturally yet. But it's an incredible award. It's the one before you get the Dame and Sir. It's like the highest one you can get. And I still am very shocked. While we're talking about awards, I also was given by the Restorative Justice Council, which is the main charity in the UK, outstanding recognition for my work in restorative justice. And in this year, significant contribution award in recognition of my extraordinary and sustained impact on the field of restorative justice. So yeah, a lot of what I've done has been away from awards or acknowledgement or validation. I've just been doing what I do. And so to get this is one incredible acknowledgement, and also plan to use it to open more doors to make more contribution. Because I haven't finished yet. I decided, even though I could have retired, I'm giving another 10 years to make the world more restorative. I've been working a lot in Northern Ireland. There's 2 incredible organisations in Northern Ireland that do restorative justice, and they have an unusual, or they kind of developed restorative justice away from like the traditional way of doing it to meet the needs of the community. So I find it very creative, very visionary. They take a lot more risks than we would do in England. And I love working that way. And partnering with them, I got to, different communities I wouldn't have got to make a difference. And that always means a lot to me. I've been doing restorative circles, I've been doing interventions, I've been incredibly busy. I work a lot in schools, using my story and then support them in becoming more restorative.
And Joe, can you quickly tell your story for those who might not know it?
Oh, okay. So 41 years ago, my father was blown up in a terrorist attack in England. It was the IRA who were responsible, and they were targeting the whole British government. But my father was the only member of parliament that was killed. 4 others were killed as well, but they weren't politicians. And I was 27, and it was the beginning for me of a restorative journey, which I didn't know that word back then, wasn't around. But it was for me about creating something positive and not blaming and not staying a victim and not going for revenge. And then after we had the peace process, I met the man who killed my father, Patrick McGee. At that time, in 2000, no one would take me on. I didn't know anyone who would facilitate it. I tried. So me being quite stubborn and wanting to meet my needs, I went on my own, broke all the rules of how to do this. But it worked. I met him in a private house, and it worked in that he moved from justification to saying that he was disarmed by my empathy, and that he started his own journey of recognition that he killed a human being. So he started off the meeting not aware that there were any human beings involved, because he dehumanized them, which we know is the nature of violence. And he rehumanized him through meeting me and realized that he was guilty of killing an amazing man with a soul. And that began his journey. And we're still in dialogue together. We've become friends. It's been challenging at times, for sure. We've spoken in many different countries around the world, and we use our story to, when we speak together, to for people to know what's possible, and that hatred and dehumanization doesn't lead to healing and peace, but dialogue does. And it's been for me, powerful way of me learning to be more restorative. There's a new documentary that's going to be coming out, non-profit. It's actually been made by my colleague, and now he's the CEO of my charity, Imad Karam, who's from Gaza. So the documentary is being halted at times because he's lost 65 members of his family, and he's still trying to get his mother out. So even making the documentary has been very real. That's how my life seems to be. But that makes it to me even more powerful. And he and I have started speaking around the documentary. It will be online and it will be free. It's non-profit. So as soon as it is, I'll let you all know. I think as an aid for all sorts of things, it'll be very powerful. We're hoping to premiere it in Belfast next year and in London. What else? I mean, I was very involved in the play The Punch, which was a restorative justice play in London, and spoke after it. And it's really ignited people's interest in restorative justice, and it's actually was done really, really well. I don't know if any Maria, you got to see it or you heard about it, but it as you know, as a theatrical, dramatic story of a proper face-to-face restorative justice process, it's very realistic. It's very, very powerful. And Jacob, with one punch, killed a young man, and the mother of that young man's been very involved in the making of the play as well, even though it's more his story. Like, she's very much in the play too. So that was amazing. I still do my local restorative justice for Wiltshire, where I live, and as always, that's something that kind of takes me back to learning how to facilitate, and I tend to do the more sensitive and complex cases. I've just been incredibly busy. And next year there's a lot more that I'm planning to do. I think that's it, Lisa, for now.
Thank you so much, Joe. You're just phenomenal. What can we say? I've known you so long, and It's incredible. What a witness you've been to the world. And, you know, everyone deserves this award of being an ambassador of restorative justice. So I had to choose some this year, but it's everybody on the screen and the rest of the council. So thank you so much. And we'll have to update a podcast with you because it's been a while since we did one. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jill.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. And the next person, let's get Professor Don John O'Malley from Nigeria. Welcome.
It's good to see you again. And good evening to you from here. I shuttle between Nigeria and the UK. So I'm currently in the UK at the moment. And I'm happy to see you again and for the good work that you have been doing around the world. Keep it up. Reporting on Nigeria, I would say that, yeah, restorative justice is getting its roots into the system and the institutions in Nigeria, particularly within the criminal justice sector. More importantly, restorative justice become nationally acknowledged when the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019 was passed into, became a law. The bill became a law. So since then, most states in Nigeria, because we have 36 states in Nigeria, so many states are now beginning to sensitize their judiciary, because in Nigeria, every state has to domesticate a national law for the law to become applicable in their own states. So most states now are beginning to domesticate the Nigerian Correctional Service Act and the Administration of Criminal Justice Act into their own criminal justice system. And that is quite interesting because there is a significant development now of this kind of what they call restorative justice center evolving in most states in Nigeria now, especially the states that have domesticated the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. So that's quite interesting. The only challenging thing is that some of us who are not lawyers are afraid. We have this fear that the thing is now going to be hijacked by the legal institution because they see this as part of restorative justice now being adopted as part of the legal jurisprudence in most of the states that are now adopting this. And being, appointment is being made by judges, by chief judge of the state. The person must be a lawyer or a judge or a magistrate and all that. So, and restorative justice is not only meant for lawyers. They need to really know that. That is, it is good that states are adopting it, but colonizing it as a legal, as something that belongs to the legal institution is something that we de-emphasize so many people who are not lawyers but are restorative justice experts and advocates. That's one fear that I see there, and I continue to speak out against it. Again, I have seen that fear is even one of the things that is mainly, in a way, affecting the takeoff, the national rollout of implementation of restorative justice in the correctional setting in Nigeria, because there is this in-house political tussle between ownership of who control restorative justice at the national level. Should it be the Nigerian Correctional Service or the Federal Ministry of Justice?
Yeah.
So there's this tussle between the judiciary, the national judicial system, and the Nigerian Correctional Service. But we have spoken a lot around that, and the two organizations are working hand in hand to try to resolve that. So that's one. Within the year 2025, as the founder of the African Forum for Restorative Justice, annually we organize our annual Restorative Justice Week, which Lisa has been a speaker on 2 occasions or 3 occasions. So this year we had our guest speaker was Professor John Braithwaite from Australia. And he is seriously contributing to developing young Africans within the academic sector. So, he has this grant because he won this Barzan Fellowship. You know, I put Lisa on that bid. Unfortunately, we didn't get it. So John Braithwaite got it. So part of that Barzan Award, he is using that to train 20 African scholars who are interested in doing PhD research in restorative justice or peace building. So he used that opportunity to visit Nigeria, interacted with scholars, and try to also look at the opportunities there where he can use the forum to conduct research and network. And I'm happy to say that at least for now, he has been able to support about 10 scholars with the sum of $10,000 each to help them do research in restorative justice and peace building. Part of what he has started doing, by November 2026, he will be organizing a kind of a summit at the African Union in Addis Ababa, where he will bring the scholars that he has funded so far to come and present part of their research. So when the timeline of that summit is ready, I will share it with you. Yeah. Another interesting thing in Nigeria is that Nigeria is like an epicenter of conflict and violence for a very long time, especially with the emergence of terrorism in 2019, in 2009, I mean. So successive governments have not really been doing well to counter terrorism. So this year, 2025, President Trump of the United States now publicly announced that Nigeria is a country of political interest or something like that. So that triggered serious debate now in Nigeria. Some people were not happy that he designated Nigeria as a country of public interest or political interest. Some were really happy that, yes, at least somebody has spoken out to challenge the intractable conflicts in that country that has been killing so many people. So that, again, is a massive opportunity for peace builder, restorative justice advocate, and all these to come in and see how the designation of Nigeria as a country of political interest or public interest will not cause or degenerate into Christian and Muslim crisis. So that's an opportunity that I see for restorative justice advocates and peace builders. And we hope that will not cause more conflict between the Christians and the Muslims. Actually, for the whole of Africa, Africa is an epicenter of conflict. So we cannot say that the need for restorative justice in Africa is in fact overwhelming, because anywhere you go in Africa, you see conflicts and you see people looking for how these things can be resolved amicably. All right? Because one, the political leaders are even becoming authoritarian than the military. So the people are not really happy with the way democracy is being run in most of the countries in Africa. Recently in Tanzania, for instance, a woman was the president there. People were happy when she won the election some years ago, but evidence is showing that she is even becoming more dictatorial than the military, because the last election, she shut down internet completely in the whole of Tanzania, so that people will not be able to go on the social media to report the atrocity and the rigging and everything that was going on in the election. So it's crazy. Africa really needs people like you. And like I said, the problem, what we need is how do we get funding to do this massive demand for restorative justice in Africa. That is just it. So I'm happy that Jonathan is doing his own bit within the prison system, but within the whole social sector, our social system in Africa, Africa needs experts and international collaboration to be able to deal with the massive and intractable conflicts on the continent of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Don John, did you mention your affiliation with your university? Just for the record.
Thank you very much. Yeah, currently I am with the University of Derby in the UK, and recently University of South Wales have given me an honorary visiting fellow in counter-terrorism and countering violent extremism and transnational organized crime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Yes, thank you.
Let's move on to Austin Stack. And Austin, you weren't on the call when I mentioned you, but I mentioned the podcast we did with you, which was very enjoyable, about your new book, which is Justice for My Father. So introduce yourself, Austin.
Lisa, I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, I got the times mixed up.
I'm sorry, 1 second, Barbara.
That's why I came on a little bit late. So yeah, I did the podcast, Austin Stack. Most of you have known me from before, from previous meetings we've had here. I'm a advocate for restorative justice here in Ireland, and particularly in relation to legacy of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And I have worked in my dad was a prison officer, a senior prison officer in Ireland that was murdered by the IRA during the Troubles. And as Lisa said, I've had a book published in March about the case, about, there's different aspects to it. I wanted to get my dad's story across also. Then, there was 3 different separate police investigations that, for various reasons, weren't, I suppose, followed through properly. Then I talk about meeting with the terrorists, trying to organize a meeting with the terrorists, which I did, and we were brought away in a blacked out van up the side of a mountain to talk to IRA leaders, who gave us a mission finally that they had carried out the attack. And then I suppose the last part of the book, I deal with how ongoing re-traumatization and re-victimization of victims, how the state need to give us an apology, and how I'm working on that and stuff like that at the moment. Um, Also, I've been very much involved in the last number of years in the EU policy, the EU Commission policy forums in relation to radicalization awareness, and that kind of has moved on a step this year. We had a very specific project for the last 5 years where there was different workshops, and the one I was on was victims of terrorism, and we finished our work in July of last year. And now they have a kind of a new, more holistic approach as kind of a new knowledge hub on awareness of radicalization. And I have been taking part in a couple of workshops recently in relation to that. There was a very large victims of terrorism one in Brussels about a month ago. And then we did an AI workshop in Berlin about 2 weeks ago. Um, so the EU is very much focused. There's a lot of focus on the Victims Directive from the EU, and the governments have, finally decided that they're going to kind of start moving in tandem. Some governments are moving quicker than others in relation to the Victims Directive, which basically gives victims a voice in all cases. That's a directive from the EU. Um, the radicalization hub, what they've done is they have put together experts from right across Europe in different sectors. So there will be academics, there will be prisons-based people, there will be people have a knowledge of mental health, there will be people then like myself who would have victims advocates, there will be police, law enforcement. So there's a collection of experts. And what they're doing at the moment is we had the victims one. We had at the meeting in Brussels a couple of weeks ago. It was very much tailored towards having a joined up thinking in relation to supports, in relation to how victims can maybe engage with, if required, with the perpetrators. There was a lot of talk about that in the workshop that I chaired. Um, so there's going to be some movement in relation to getting an EU-wide website for victims groups, okay, and then that we can feed in so that the experts are there. So if somebody wants restorative justice, that there's an expert there that can help and talk to the group concerned and the individuals concerned. So that's something that's coming down the line that we had agreed at the meeting in Brussels. Um, the the I suppose from an Irish perspective, and I'm speaking very specifically about legacy from terrorism, other stuff that I suppose Mary may have spoken about some of the other stuff in relation to restorative justice that has gone on in the media and in work that Mary had been doing. Um, and so I'll just concentrate on the stuff that I'm kind of involved in, which is more the legacy of the Troubles and the Irish and British governments agreed legacy deal. And I know I spoke a little bit about that on the podcast because it was just live news when I did the podcast with Lisa. And in that they have, agreed to put a dedicated police unit in Ireland together to look at crimes from the Troubles, which they didn't have before. There is also now, I'm still a little bit skeptical about it, but I will be using my influence and certain people in relation to the unit that's going to do the information retrieval part for families and victims in relation to the Troubles, because that's still not what I would consider in any way, shape, or form uh, restorative. It's like you're getting information from a third party who goes to the terrorists and asks the terrorists, and you don't get to question it. You don't get to interrogate what you're being given. It's just kind of you're being given something by a third party and told that's the information, like it or lump it. So there's still a little bit of work, I think, in relation to that, but the dedicated police unit is a good one. Also, what they have agreed to do, the Irish government, is to put 25 million in funding for legacy projects. So what I have done with a couple of other victims is we've set up a charity called RAS, which is Remembrance, Acknowledgement and Support. And we were going to try, and what we want to do is use remembrance as a tool to go into schools and talk to children in a restorative. When I was talking about children, I'm talking about kids of about 15. There's a transition year here in school. It comes at about 15, where they bring in people and projects into schools, and also some of the universities, to talk about using remembrance as a tool in a restorative way to prevent radicalization in the future. I have also lined up possibly one ex-terrorist who may come on board with that. And it was the individual I spoke to you before about, Lisa. He may come on board with that. It's not kind of fully signed off on yet, but even if I get him to record a video piece for the work that we're going to do in the schools, it's going to be a three-part thing where we would go into the schools and we would explain how terrorism has affected. So there will be two victims give their story. Then we would also talk about how remembrance can help. How I would explain how meeting with the terrorists can, in a restorative way, can be a help. And also then we would give them a project to do, and then we would come back on a third day and discuss the results of the project. So that's the general thing of what we're trying to get across the line in relation to doing that piece of work. Also, I'm doing a piece of work again with the EU in relation to job shadowing with an up and coming, so senior people, experts in the field, will mentor a younger person. So I've been assigned a young community worker in Bratislava in Slovakia as my mentor. So as my as my student, and she will come over to Ireland in April and see the work that we're doing. I have some things lined up, and then I will go out to Bratislava and have a look at what she's doing, and help her and give her advice and stuff like that. So generally speaking, that's the work that I'm doing at the moment. It, as always, everything I do will have a restorative tint on it, and will come with the experience I had, working in prisons in restorative justice, and also working in relation to my dad's case in restorative justice. So that's where we're at.
Great. Thank you so much, Austin. And again, I encourage people to get his book, Justice for My Father. It was very revealing. I thought I knew Austin. I didn't know him that well until I read the book. It was really excellent. And the podcast is on our website. So thank you so much, Austin. Let's go to Professor Barbara in Poland. And introduce yourself fully, Barbara. Great to have you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So just to remind you, I'm a professor of criminal procedure with a focus of restorative justice, and I have the degree also in philosophy, representing Adam Mickiewicz University, Poland. But I would like to speak about my activity in 2025, and I was thinking how to summarize it. And I think that it's good to speak about three fields. The first one, it's my activity when promoting our association, Restorative Justice International. And I had an honor to present a quite number of presentation at many, I would say, not only European, but also in Korea, so in Africa and Latino America conferences. The topic were mainly connected with restorative justice, specifically this year, gender-based violence, mediation in court proceedings, enforcement procedure when it comes to the rights of children of incarcerated parents. And when it comes to the main conference, when I had an honor to represent our association, it was this year at the University of Rome, La Sapienza University, another Italian university, Carlo Bo, Urbino. I had an honor to have a classes in on global justice, including restorative justice for PhD students. And also this year in April at the University of Comillas Pontificia, Madrid, Spain. Then Bologna University, when I discussed the juvenile cases connected with restorative justice. And recently in Korea, South Korea, it was very interesting event, global conference on coexistence. So restorative justice was a part of discussion connected with many challenges regarding coexistence in law, philosophy, and social sciences general. And recently, last week in Madrid, at the university, one of the university, UNIE, I had a speech on restorative justice based on Istanbul Convention and implementation of gender-based crimes. So, of course, this is just a sample. So the last year, the part of promotion was quite extensive, but of course, it is not the core of what is the most important, namely, what is the situation of Poland, what kind of challenges and I would say changes of law has been performed this year. So fortunately or unfortunately, Poland struggles with less problems on the rule of law, but it's still valid. So restorative justice also is a part of the access to justice, which is framed by this idea of the rule of law problem, systematic problem of judiciary in Poland. So there we have some progress, and we also amended the Code of Criminal Procedure in line to implement more tools, restorative tools in criminal mediation, victim offender mediation, to broaden the scope of mediation, to create more space in pre-trial procedure to get into mediation. And also we introduced a new, I would say, adjustment of Polish criminal law to Istanbul Convention, and we introduced a new definition of rape with expressis verbis part of lack of consent of the victim, which was problematic before in Polish law. So Polish problems were also being discussed in framework of the European courts, European Court of Human Rights, also regarding restorative justice problem with sexual-based crimes, and the Court of Justice of the European Union in frame of the rule of law problems, so access to justice. So this is a part, and also some of my research of this year were in line with these new challenges, changes in Polish law. And the last part of my activities, which is maybe the most important for our association, is the activity in frame of legal clinics, because I'm a president of the legal clinic at Adam Mickiewicz University, and we granted this year the Clinic of Restorative Justice. And in frame of the clinic, we did many educational programs, including against violence program in schools, mediation programs in schools, national action against violence among the teenagers, as well as we continue the program with the Faculty of Education regarding the children of incarcerated parents connected with telling story in the prisons. And this year also we enhance the programs of restorative justice linked with the war in Ukraine and the victim of war, which are now resident in Poland. So we organized workshops, also created some cultural space for discussion about the violence connected with war and sexual violence, collaborating with another association, which is with the purpose of gathering pieces of evidence on the war crimes in Ukraine, which is called, the association is called Sunflower. And last but not least, we opened the new program on mediation and restorative justice in frame of legal clinic. And very soon, in March 17, there will be an event on migration, challenges to migration, and also including restorative justice problems, specifically sexual-based violence, and with the focus of mutilation of female organ. And we will have the guest from Angola, the people who work in embassy of Madrid from Angola are coming to Poland to share the experiences about this kind of crimes committed in Angola, but also elsewhere. So crimes based on culture. So these are the most important activity. I will send, of course, to all members of association information of the event of March. Maybe it will be a possibility to participate online, also at place. So maybe in this regard, association might be interested. We also hope to have some representatives of India, which also is a country connected with gender-based violence strongly, as it was said before by another member of the board. So we hope to keep this direction also 2026. And last but not least, I started very important program in frame of Jean Monnet module of the European Union, connected with rule of law and democratization. And there is also the space for restorative justice. So I hope to develop this space as well. Of course, when it comes to education of law students, but also in frame of the open university, so with a broader public, so also for the society and of Spain and Poland, because the project Jean Monnet is open for the Polish University and for Juan Carlos University in Madrid. And maybe I might mention also this year, I had the pleasure to be a supervisor of, co-supervisor and the reviewer of one PhD from Croatian restorative justice. So Lia Feuerbach had a very insightful research about Balkans and restorative justice. Also, research includes experiences after the war in Balkans, which is the first experience in field of international tribunal, simultaneously with the Rwanda tribunal, the tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, that restorative justice could be explored internationally in frame of international criminal justice. So I think that this is the most important part of what I did last year, and hopefully next year will be more effective. So welcome to my activities, and of course I will be keeping with promoting the association and restorative justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Barbara. Sounds like a full year. Wonderful, wonderful. Let's go to Jeffrey Deskovic. And we've known each other. Jeff, you can explain our relationship, how long we've known each other, and that you're with the Deskovic Foundation.
Sure. So I've known you so long, I don't remember how long I've known you. But yes, but we met in California. Jesus, I don't remember the year. But I know you introduced me at a presentation I did. I was a keynote speaker for the Davis Vanguard, and I've been serving on the council for an uncountable number of years now, advising RJI on wrongful conviction issues and more broadly criminal justice reform issues, which includes, but it's not limited to, giving not just information about the overall issues, but also discussing, evaluating applications of people running for political office on wrongful conviction prevention and criminal justice reform planks. So we've done podcasts and focused a lot on wrongful conviction, of restorative justice applied to wrongful conviction, including discussing what does one thing have to do, what's the connection, as you would put it. So my story in brief is that I was exonerated by DNA testing after 16 years in prison in New York for murder and rape that I didn't commit. Was convicted when I was 17. I was exonerated 16 years later after I had lost 7 appeals, got turned down for parole, largely because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse and taking responsibility. My charges were dismissed on actual innocence grounds. On further DNA testing that identified the actual perpetrator, and my life has been about fighting wrongful conviction since then. Have a master's degree. I used some of the money I received as compensation to start the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which purpose is to free people in the same position I was once in, and also on the policy side aimed at preventing what happened to me from happening to others. I got tired of sitting in the front row of the courtroom, so I decided to become a lawyer so I could represent some of the clients and make some of the arguments in pursuit of exonerating others as a lawyer. Overall, we've helped to free 15 people since opening our doors in 2011, and helped to pass 9 laws aimed at preventing wrongful conviction. 6 of those as part of the It Could Happen to You coalition, which I'm part of, and David Love is as well. So in terms of just giving like a report on wrongful conviction. So first up, I'll say the foundation had a major victory in December. So we had overturned our client Andre Brown's conviction, his wrongful conviction for 2 attempted murders. That was back in 2023. So he was released after 23 years in prison out of the 40. The judge had overturned the conviction, not on the actual innocence grounds that we argued or newly discovered evidence, but he granted it on ineffective assistance of counsel. The Bronx District Attorney's Office appealed the reversal. They got the conviction reinstated. And so for the better part of a year, we were in crisis mode more than 5 different times. Andre nearly had to surrender back in court because he owed another 17 years on his sentence. So often the day before court or a couple of before he was supposed to surrender, we got last-second adjournments. And while we pursued various remedies for him, including trying to go to the Court of Appeals, which was unsuccessful, we filed clemency petition, but they decided not to grant clemency at this time. And so finally we filed a resentencing motion, which was ultimately conceded to by the Bronx DA's office. And then the judge agreed to resentence Andre to time served, recognizing that he would not likely to get a 40-year prison sentence now, while also taking into account a lot of Andre's restorative work during his 2 years of freedom. While he was innocent of the crime, I mean, he had been involved in selling drugs before he had stopped, shortly before he'd been arrested. And so he did have opportunities to turn his life around in that aspect of it. And so during those 2 years of freedom, he was working with at-risk youth in the New Rochelle City Court, the Opportunity for Youth part. He was helping to divert at-risk youth from becoming involved in the justice system, started a GED program, participated in chess club and book club with these at-risk youth. So happy that as of a couple of weeks ago, he will not in fact be going back to prison. His freedom is permanently secured. We're still going to work on exonerating him, but at least he's not in danger of that.
Jeff,
overall, the foundation has...
Jeff,
yes.
Can I stop you? I just want to give you a round of applause for that, releasing him.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful story that we've been following. Thank you. Continue on.
Absolutely. Sure. So we have 9 cases that were wrongful conviction cases we're working on. We're hoping to exonerate some folks this year, including a couple of cases where we've persuaded the district attorney's office to allow our clients to get DNA testing. So we have the 9 cases we're working on. We're pursuing policy changes in New York, continuing to try to strengthen our state's laws in terms of preventing false confessions. We've gotten pushback from the legislature, not on the merits of recording in all situations, Youth Interrogation Act, which would give 17-year-olds and kids younger a non-waivable right to counsel and ban law enforcement from using deception in interrogation. So the pushback we've gotten is not on the merits of the wrongful conviction prevention legislation, but instead it's political. We're told things at times like, well, this is not the right year. This is an election year. We want to protect our marginals, which are people that are holding a seat in a district that's primarily made up of voters of the other political party. And so they don't want to place their members at risk by asking them to vote in support of legislation that's needed because that might give their political opponent something to run on. The Assembly not wanting to pass things before the Senate not wanting to pass things before the Assembly. So it's a little bit frustrating because that's not supposed to be a career. You're supposed to get elected to serve and to do the best you can for the people. And after that, if you get reelected, you get reelected. If you don't, you don't. It's not supposed to be a goal in and of itself. So we're working on those measures. We've gotten that pushback, which is a little bit frustrating. Just like we're working for parole reform and collaboration with groups like Vocal New York and RAP, just believing in second chances. So, we think that when people have served their minimum sentence, that the parole board should cite one other factor other than just nature of the crime. So we've been working on that. But again, we're having political difficulties. But really, that involves restorative justice aspect in the sense that restorative justice, by definition, acknowledges the possibility of rehabilitation, and that's the opposite. Should be released back to the community who are denied that. We're working with it could happen to you in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of 11 states that does not offer exonerable compensation. So we have a bill that's been introduced on the House of Representatives side and the Senate side, but we're trying to improve the bill some and continue to build support. We think that on a societal level, an important part of restorative justice is for society to try to restore people who've been wrongfully imprisoned by providing them with compensation, an important tool to try to rebuild your life. Done some work again with David along with other key stakeholders in that state. In California, we're working on the Commission on Prosecutor Conduct, building support for that measure, which we passed in New York. And again, having people who are victims to have a place to go to receive some justice, some accountability, to have a deterrent effect. I mean, that's part of restorative justice. So we have an upcoming tour in California, building support. We're going to have events on January 6th, 8th, and 9th in cities of San Francisco, San Diego, and Los Angeles. So I'm going to fly out to participate in that, along with our policy director, Bill Bastick. We've done a lot in terms of public education. I've spoken at a number of DNA conferences towards the end of the year, and just discussing the application of DNA in terms of preventing wrongful conviction and exoneration. Northeastern Association of Forensic Scientists, look at the ISHE conference. So we've done that. There is a full feature documentary out called 16 Years. We've been doing private screenings of that, looking to build support, proof of concept. The producer is, looking to get a distribution deal, but it's an hour-and-a-half documentary. So myself and the producer, Gia Wirtz, we've done a bunch of these private screenings at various schools and in some other countries. So if you're listening and you'd like to bring the documentary there, please, reach out. But so far, we've been able to do 14 of them. I've participated in a lot of speaking events in front of high school kids who've identified that they'd like to be lawyers in the future. So I've done some presentations there, and we hope that to inspire them to go into the legal field and to do at least one wrongful conviction case pro bono in the course of their work. Did it recently for the Rockland County Bar Association. gave a training, continued legal education on assessing actual innocence claims, viability of exoneration. So the goal is to equip lawyers who are working in other areas on how to assess innocence claims, how to go about working on trying to free people. And that's important because there's far more wrongful conviction cases out there than what the foundation or what the other innocence organizations can do by ourselves. We've been pushing, trying to, we're on board. We were awarded a grant from the, I want to shout out the podcast, Crazy Good Turns, and they gave us $10,000 to do our innocence work. Did a presentation in actually in a prison, in a maximum security prison in Pennsylvania, along with my fiance, and just sharing not just my story, but these are the things that I did to expand my horizons, both while I was in prison and afterwards, and sharing those steps, which are very much replicable to other people that are doing time. Overall, as 2025 comes to a close, more than 104 exonerations across the U.S., including Elwood Jones in Ohio, who was exonerated from Ohio's death row after spending 27 years there. And I think it's really a good moment as I wind down my report to note the importance of death penalty abolition work. And that being something that the restorative justice community and broader advocates take on in light of the risk of executing innocent people. In September 24th, 2024, in Missouri, Marcellus Williams was executed despite being excluded by a number of DNA items, including on a murder weapon, hairs, bloody footprints, and he was executed despite that evidence and while asking for more testing. The policy work to affect broad, large, improved justice system overall, and then trying to free people. Innocence work, of course, is not an anti-law enforcement. It's about accuracy and justice, and I continue to stress that, as we do the work and we pitch the tent as large as we can. I think on a societal level, in terms of restorative justice beyond compensation, just having those key prisoner reentry services from housing, cost of living, doctor and dental care, access to public transportation, job training, job placement, classes on technology. I feel like that's important to restore the individual that way on a societal level, and also equally as important, just identifying what are those deficiencies in the justice system that led to the injustice in that case, to try to prevent that from happening, in the future and in the same way. But I feel like we need more buy-in from law enforcement. Not all of these cases most of these cases are not good faith errors. There's often misconduct, but we really rarely see any type of acknowledgement on that. And we need to try to, law enforcement and forensic scientists that are involved in wrongful convictions where involved misconduct, we need to, and an apology is important. And having that said, I know it sounds silly to some people, but because the time is gone no matter what, but just to have that acknowledgement that something wrong was done, I feel is an important element in looking for healing. I mean, I never got that apology myself. Some part of me still wishes I would have gotten some kind of apology. So if you're listening, it's not too late for me, but but for other people as well. But just enjoying doing this type of work and bringing attention to restorative justice, and just hoping to get more candidates into position that are going to be proactive in terms of preventing these injustices in the first place.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And remember to let us know how we can support you on public policy work that you do. And that's true of all of you. Sometimes I think RJI, we're out there and we can do more, but you have to let us know what you're doing too. But thank you for all that you have done this year. Thank you. Let's go to Professor Marie Keenan in Ireland. And Professor, you are now an ambassador of restorative justice for RJI.
Thank you very much. It is an honour, truly. So thank you, Lisa, and everyone. Just while whilst it's on my mind, whilst Barbara was speaking, you may or may not be familiar with a new book that's out called Becoming a Restorative Lawyer. And I think it is quite interesting. I have it and I've had a quick look. Brenda, Waugh, I can put the link in the thing, but it could be interesting. Yeah. So for me, I suppose what's been happening in Ireland from my end, Austin has covered from his end, but the two big areas that I've been kind of embedded in probably at the three big areas. One is sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. That's back on the agenda in a big way. Restorative justice in response to sexual violence. And also serious violence, if you like. All violence is serious, I suppose, but one punch attack and domestic violence, and then institutional abuses. So I'll just talk about those three. So with regard to sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, there's quite a bit happening in Ireland in that regard from a restorative justice perspective. And also in Europe. So in Ireland, a number of religious orders have had, I mentioned this last year, but it has continued, have restorative initiatives in relation to responding to legacy issues, really to do with abuse of boys or girls in their schools, largely boys. They're men in their 50s and 60s now, and they are now being responded to restoratively by the Spiritan order and by the Jesuit order. And the Jesuits have finished their work, and the Spiritans have continued their work. And there is a lot of things happening there. We're really working hard on a restorative redress program. And a number of the victim survivors have had restorative meetings with institutional leaders. And now I'm about to chair a new project on testimony gathering that will be launched in January, using all part of the restorative framework. So there's a lot happening in Ireland. And in Europe, we had a meeting, a gathering of 25 people, all of whom are practitioners in various European countries, responding restoratively to sexual abuse, largely within religious institutions. So the majority of the people that were represented there were practitioners doing this work in relation to the Catholic Church, Belgium, the Netherlands, Spain, Ireland. But there were a couple of other religious institutions represented, so Muslim community and so on. So what the purpose of that gathering was, it took place in Portugal, but it was to share experiences and models of working restoratively in religious faith-based institutions. So a report is being compiled on all of that, and when it is available, I'll let you have that. But it was quite interesting. But it was largely work being done in the Catholic Church, but in some other faith-based institutions also. So also, that sexual abuse in the Catholic Church keeps popping up everywhere. Some countries are very slow to come to the table, particularly, for instance, Italy. The Italians are, like, not the Italian people, but the Vatican and whatever is slow to acknowledge abuse in the Catholic Church in Italy. But in other countries, this is now on the agenda. Initially, it was seen as an American, Australian, Irish problem. But of course, within Europe, it's more acknowledged now. There is talk of Africa and, some of the other countries in Asia. But in Europe, the Portuguese Catholic Church had a report out a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, and they established a committee. So they're now trying to respond. And I'll just summarise, the main thrust of anything that I'm doing, but that others like me are doing, in response to, in all these jurisdictions we're invited to come and talk to them about abuse in the Catholic Church, we're trying to say to them, in Ireland it took 30 years to really get with the restorative agenda for responding to abuse in the Catholic Church. They did all the other things first, all the criminal justice, Don't let it be 30 years. We can short circuit this. You can learn from the experience in other jurisdictions. So that's the main point. But there are things happening around responding restoratively to abuses in faith-based institutions. So that's just the first area and I think I'm brought in not only because of the restorative justice stuff, but because of my first book, which was on child abuse in the Catholic Church, the Oxford thing. So those two lenses kind of, I think, is why people keep, now I don't go everywhere and I can't go everywhere and whatever, but to the extent that I can, I am interested in trying to help the Catholic Church and faith-based institutions to respond restoratively, because it fits also with Catholic social teaching. It's logical. It is logical for them to respond restoratively, and yet for many years they haven't. They've done lots of other things. So that's one big thing. And the other big area is sexual violence. And so there is now, I think I sent you, Lisa, we had a case in Ireland that kind of galvanised us again. It was basically a Spanish student was raped 5 years ago in Ireland. And the case came to trial recently in the summer. And the man pleaded not guilty, but was convicted. And when the judge, on the day of the conviction, the judge asked, is there anything anybody wanted to say, whatever. And the young lady said, yes, she would like restorative justice. And the judge said, there was a bit of a flurry of activity, it seems. I wasn't in the court, but by all accounts. And she said, I don't know if restorative justice is suitable in these cases. So shows you the information deficit. They don't know. The judiciary. We knew this, but here was evidence. But anyway, the judge sent the victim and the accused, the perpetrator now, outside with their legal teams to discuss this matter briefly and come back into her. The woman said, yes, I really want it. The young man who was convicted said, I'm willing to do it. I realise now that I did caused harm, and he apologises. So the judge sends the prosecution counsel away, adjourns sentence for a month, sends the prosecution away to investigate how restorative justice would be done and what would be happening. And she also says it won't impact the sentence. This man is getting a custodial sentence, but let's do restorative justice as well. But the outcome of all that was a report. The senior counsel went to the probation service. A report came back to the court saying restorative justice is not feasible in this case. And so I won't go in beyond that, just to say that Alva and I took to the airwaves and the whatever. But out of it all, not just that case, it was happening. We are now looking to establish another service, a pilot for sexual violence cases in the state, to pilot it over, to give counsel and to give victims an alternative to the probation service, because it seems like that's the only place that the funding is going. So we're looking at that, and I'm very hopeful that 2026 will be the year where we will be able to establish another service, a restorative justice service, probably located in a victims agency, but piloted for 3 years. So I'll, please God, be able to report on that next year. So that's what's been happening in Ireland around that. So that's the second leg of the thing that I wanted to report. And then apart from that, you know that we had the book out this year on transforming justice responses to non-recent institutional abuse. That was with colleagues, and that's available free on Oxford University website for download, and we have a whole section on restorative justice, and it's based on empirical research. And with a few people in the European Forum, we're just submitting another book, which will be out early next year, please God, on organisational abuse, and we have abuse in the Canadian military. It's all about restorative responses. So restorative responses to abuse in the Canadian military, in higher education. I wrote that chapter myself. In Israel. So obviously lots of sensitivities, but that, and the Catholic Church and various other organisations. Sport and so on. So that will be one to watch. So that's just something else that's taking my attention, if you like. Organisations, businesses, corporations, and responses, restorative responses in those contexts. So that's pretty well. Apart from that, like Joe and others, I'm doing a bit of practice in prisons, in, community, whatever, restorative meetings. I want to organise a conference in Ireland next year. I really want to do that. So, and I have, I've mentioned this to Joe before, and I've mentioned it to you, Lisa. So I want to pack the place with testimonies and whatever, and really do something. So maybe Austin and myself will put our heads together, and a few others. Yeah.
We're
we'll be
interested in that. Well, thank you so much, Professor. And let me just mention too that RJI did share your op-ed that you wrote, your opinion piece about the case that you mentioned. And we also got the radio interview with you and Elva, who was on our council. We got that out on the air. So thank you so much. I see that we have Reverend Jack on the call. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to first, I think, turn to David Love. David, can you go next from Philadelphia? Introduce yourself and welcome. Glad to see you.
Indeed. And it's great to see you. Thank you, Lisa, for bringing us all together. And thanks to all of you for being here and for all the important work that you're doing around the world. So I'm a journalism and media studies professor at Rutgers University in New Jersey, the United States. And I teach courses on media ethics and law, also gender, race, and class in the media. And I'm also a journalist and a writer. And I focus on race and politics and human rights, social justice, criminal justice, inequality, and once worked in the government, in the Pennsylvania legislature, also was a clerk in the federal courts, and I was executive director of Witness to Innocence, which is a death penalty abolitionist organization consisting of death row survivors. So, so obviously, I'm coming from the U.S., reporting from the U.S., which is, I believe, a violent place as we witness the onset of fascism, disappearing of immigrants by ICE agents, and I believe also the imminent death of white supremacy. I believe we're experiencing an extinction burst, but I also think it's a hopeful time, and you can just see the need for restorative justice in the United States right now. I just want to highlight a couple of the things that I've done this year in terms of the work that I've done. This spring, I participated in a teach-in at Rutgers that some of the faculty held with students on how to survive fascism. And I spoke about the role of the enemy, the other in a fascist regime, as well as the personification of society's problems, focusing on that enemy. Also looked at the role of you know the a dominant race, a superior race. Also the role in capitalism in what's unfolding in this country, and the role that universities are playing in authoritarian regimes, and how people in the West are now getting a taste of how colonized people were always treated. And in reality, in the United States, fascism always existed for marginalized and racialized groups, Black people, Native Americans, and others. I just want to mention that one of my colleagues who participated in the teach-in, history professor Mark Bray, recently fled the country with his family. They fled to Spain after he was placed on Turning Point USA's blacklist because of his work on anti-fascism. So he received death threats from students and others, and had to flee the country. This summer, I was in dialogue with the Reconstructionist Jewish community, of which I'm a member. I participated in a speaker series called Reconstructionists Expanding Our Conversation on Israel and Palestine. And I was in conversation with two rabbis here in the U.S. and talked about the need for Jews in North America to atone for the Gaza genocide of the Palestinian people, also for years of apartheid and occupation, and the need to come to terms with the historical harm that Jewish people have caused in Palestine, the grief, trauma, and damage inflicted on Palestinians, and the need for restorative justice in that part of the world and a free Palestine. I also had the honor to speak at the Garden State Scholastic Press Association. It's essentially an association of high school journalists. And I spoke with them, high school journalists throughout New Jersey, on present day threats to freedom of speech, press freedom, academic freedom, and solutions to resisting creeping authoritarianism, and also preserving democracy in America. And we talked about different things, including the need to not comply or obey in advance in terms of autocratic regimes, the need to learn history and challenge efforts to erase it, because authoritarian regimes do not like the teaching of history, the need for solidarity and organizing, creativity, the need for truth tellers, writers, and thinkers tied to the community, and things of that nature. And just looking ahead, I have been focusing my research and writing on the role of the media in perpetuating human rights violations and genocide and abuses, but also envisioning a media that shines a light on atrocities and brings healing and accountability. So, I look back at points in time like Nazi Germany, and I'm reminded of people like Julius Streicher, publisher of the Nazi newspaper Der Stürmer, who was tried at Nuremberg, and he was convicted and hanged for his role in enabling the Holocaust because of the articles, the editorials, and the cartoons that he published depicting Jewish people as vermin. I think of how the US media enabled the mass internment of Japanese Americans and the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And looking back to 2020 with the, following the murder of George Floyd, the US media began to come to terms with their shameful history of enabling slavery, Jim Crow, and lynchings, and maintaining the racial hierarchy in this country over the years. There seemed to be an opportunity for restorative justice to come through. There were just apologies, but not really much to back it up. I look at the Rwanda genocide, the role of broadcasters, radio and TV, as well as print journalists in perpetuating genocide. And also, more recently in Gaza, the role of Israeli media, Western media, and that's, both traditional media as well as social media in dehumanizing Palestinian people and really paving the way for what we have seen unfold over the past few years. So that's sort of what's been on my mind. And because I'm a journalism and media studies professor, I'm thinking a lot about the media and the harm it has caused, but also trying to look in terms of how the media can be used for restorative justice and healing. So I guess that's just a summary of the things that I've been thinking about and the things that I've been doing, and it's a real pleasure to be here and talk with everyone. I think it's great to be in community with all of you, and I also feel as if it's a learning experience at the same time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. We haven't talked very much about how the year has been kind of a dangerous year in the United States and around the world, but I do think that we're a beacon of hope as we continue to do the work we do and speak out for truth and restorative justice, as David just said. So thank you so much. And it's great to have Reverend Jack Sullivan Jr. Here with us. I was worried you weren't going to make it, Jack. And I mentioned that you were one of the recipients of the RJI Ambassador of Restorative Justice Award this year. Thank you. And also, I'm sure you'll mention this, the Reverend has retired this year formally from ministry after I think it's 40 years of service, but we're grateful that you're staying with us on this council. So thank you so much, and go ahead with your remarks and introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Hello, everyone. What an honor it was for me to be among those who were named ambassadors of restorative justice. I am very grateful and thankful for that designation. I bring you all greetings from Columbus, Ohio, in the United States, where I actually have 12 more days to function as the executive director of the Ohio Council of Churches, a 105-year-old ecumenical body that brings together 17 denominations as a Jesus Christ movement for unity, justice, and peace. And the same day that I was named an ambassador, I received an honor from the Hunger Network in Ohio for the Faithful Servant Award And both awards I'm thankful for, and they have to do with restorative justice, and particularly the death penalty abolition work that I have been a part of formerly for the last 12 years. And the work with the Council of Churches has involved death penalty abolition. And perhaps our most vibrant ministry, though, has been to work to prevent gun violence in Ohio. We just issued a statement. In fact, it's going out as I speak, a pastoral letter that we've written concerning gun violence in Ohio and beyond. We received a grant just a few days ago for $100,000 for us to do work that centers on a project that I designed called PLAN, Pastors and Laity Advancing Nonviolence. And through that, we want to equip clergy and laity, and not just Christians, but of any faith group. We want to equip them to be agents of peacemaking and nonviolence, to help build or continue building the cultures of nonviolence in their neighborhoods, where we say no to gunfire and to all kinds of violence, physical and economic, social, and other realms of violence. We want to be people who make peace. And of course, that peacemaking involves working for justice. It's not just the absence of tension, as we all know, but it's also the presence of justice in our world. And from a Christian standpoint, I always quote Cornel West, who says, justice in the public square, love in the public square is essentially social justice. And that's the work that we do through the Ohio Council of Churches. And I've committed my life to that work for the last 42 years. And as you say, Lisa, I am not going to be retiring from the work. I will gracefully and gratefully remain a part of a GAC and continue the work in restorative justice and death penalty abolition. I anticipate going to Paris, France in June for the World Congress Against the Death Penalty, and then in October of this year to South Africa for a consultation on Africans and Africans in the diaspora, which is a subgroup of the World Council of Churches. Earlier this year, during my sabbatical, I went to Zimbabwe and spent 3 weeks there. It should have been 4 weeks, but I had the flu and I had to miss 1 week because of that illness. But I was learning about the way African churches work to end colonialism, particularly in Zimbabwe, and to be freedom-seeking bodies, even though they are dealing with internal issues that were sparked both during colonialism and after. These churches in Zimbabwe that I studied during my sabbatical are instrumental in organizing for change and for justice in villages and in cities across the country. And I expect to go back next year, taking a group with me to probe the work of the church in a post-colonialist country of Zimbabwe. I'm under contract to write a book, and that book is behind schedule, but it's called Preaching While Black, 10 Indicators of Racism in Predominantly White Church Bodies. And the book is based on an essay I did 10 years ago that a publisher agreed to give me a contract to flesh out. And so that's what I'm doing now. Late last year, October of last year, I had an essay published in a book called Countering Racism and White Christian Supremacy. I'm sorry, Countering Racism and White Supremacy. There it is, in the U.S. Published on Friendship Press, and I did an essay concerning Christology and the way we view Jesus Christ in the church setting has everything to do with what we do in His name or don't do in His name. And so, my argument was the historic Black church, which I call America's most authentic freedom institution. That historic Black church has a sense of spirituality and an ethos about itself that builds leaders who work for justice, love-based justice, and equity across the land. And that's the message that we need to have at all churches if we're going to stand a chance to deal with Christian nationalism and also white supremacy. So I'm teaching right now as an adjunct instructor at Phillips Seminary, which is based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm a professor, a teacher of ecumenism there, and been doing my 5th course now. Well, it actually starts up in January. And all this, that I'll round it up by saying that when I retire formally, and after I sell my house in Columbus, Ohio, I will move to Greensboro, North Carolina, rejoin my wife and 2 children that we're adopting down there in Greensboro, and make my life as a North Carolinian. And so I'm very happy to be a part of this conversation. I'm sorry I'm late joining you today. I'm in transit today. I preached 2 days ago the memorial for my brother, Horace Dale Johnson, who died recently in Tampa, Florida. And so we had his memorial in Cleveland 2 days ago. And then I drove up to Cleveland from Columbus, and I just drove back, and a bit fatigued, but nevertheless, I'm back home. So it's so good to join you all.
Thank you so much, Pastor Jack. And I actually always ask you this to add on because it's a very important story. Can you just tell us about your sister?
Oh, yes. My sister Jennifer was murdered in her home in 1997 in Cleveland, Ohio. The murderer, we don't know yet. We don't know. But her then 2-year-old daughter was in the home. And,
Pastor Jack, we've lost your audio a little bit.
Yeah, can you hear me better now? Okay, my computer is need to retire also. But Jennifer was murdered in her home in Cleveland, Ohio in 1997. She was 21 years of age, full of potential, bright young woman, young mother, and her then 2-year-old daughter was in the house at the time of her murder. I based my anti-death penalty work on Jennifer's story and my call for the state to abandon violence as an option when it comes to dealing with people who've hurt us and angered us the most. I think the state first surrenders whatever high ground it has. It surrenders when it executes people. And we should commit ourselves to peacemaking and accountability that does not involve lethal means.
Good. Thank you so much, Pastor. And I have to mention that I first met Pastor Jack through the Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing, and its founder, Bill Pelkey, who at one time was on this council. And I remember Bill Pelkey, who was a very good friend of RJI and myself. And I told him that I wanted Jack Sullivan on the council. And he said, I don't think you're going to get him. He's too busy. So we've been very fortunate to have you on. Thank you so much. And let me add just a couple things and then we'll close. There are a couple people that aren't here today I want to acknowledge on the council. Martin Howard in Australia, Queensland, who's done so much for RJI, has been really with RJI since its founding in 2008. Dr. Sandro Calbani in Thailand, who I was very grateful to meet this year in South Lake Tahoe in person, a very short lunch, but it was wonderful to meet him in person. And he has an incredible background in human rights with the UN and the work he's done with us, restorative justice work. And also Paulo Moratelli in Brazil. And lastly, Professor Jane Bolitho in Australia, who actually was supposed to make this call today. So I just want to say as a way of closing, just that it's so important that we do the work we do, no matter the obstacles. There are tremendous obstacles for the work, for all of us and others that work with this organization that are on the council and our members and affiliates. It has not been an easy year for me. It's hard to continue. But we know how important this work is to victims, offenders, and communities, and those who are innocent in prison, as Jeff has told us and teaches us about. But it's so important for us to continue to shine the light on this work and to give people hope. And as Pastor Jack always signs all his messages, he signs them with hope. And then he signs his name. And I thought that's really what we're about. We give hope for those who don't have hope today. And we give a vision for justice that doesn't always exist, but restorative justice, as we know, is so needed. So thank you all for being here today, and let's hope in 2026 that we do great work and we do more work together and we bring more people in. So thank you all for being there today. Thank you. And Merry Christmas, Feliz Navidad, and Happy New Year.
Thank
Bless
you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
And this is Lisa Ray for RJI.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the RJI Podcast series with Lisa Ray. Stay in touch and support our work at restorativejusticeinternational.com.